There are moments in history, moments when the world hangs by a thread, when everything seems lost. And in those moments, a voice rises. A voice that doesn't whisper. It roars. A voice that says, never, never surrender. I love this idea that there are moments in history where everything seems like it's completely gone. All is lost. But there's this one thing, a voice that arises. A voice that is strong. A voice that is powerful. And it says, no, we will not surrender. No, we will keep fighting. This brings me to the third quote from Winston Churchill. To each, there comes in their lifetime a moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered a chance to do something extraordinary, some great act of heroism or selflessness. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared. I love this idea that all of us at some point in our lives are given an opportunity, given a chance, given a moment to do something extraordinary, something heroic, something selfless. What a tragedy if we find ourselves unprepared. And so let's talk about that. Are you prepared? Have you been preparing your entire life for the moment when you get your shot, the moment when you're called to action? How ready are you? Are you ready today? That's the question. Are you ready for the moment when you get your shot? And now we come to the fourth quote from Winston Churchill, which perfectly segues off of that last statement. The year was 1940. Europe was burning. Hitler's armies were unstoppable. France had fallen. Millions feared Britain would be next. The world expected surrender, but one man refused to bow. So we've gone from this idea of being prepared to meet your moment to talking about Churchill and his moment. And we all know the stories of Winston Churchill. He's kind of legendary in many ways, the bulldog of Britain. But here's the thing that people don't realize about Winston Churchill. He wasn't tall. He wasn't glamorous. He wasn't even popular at the time, but he had what the world needed most, unbreakable resolve. He had the unbreakable resolve that you and I need in our lives. We all want to be the most charming, the most charismatic, the funniest, the best looking. But sometimes the world needs someone just with resolve, someone who simply has the unbreakable will to push forward. So let's keep going with the quotes of Winston Churchill. He wasn't born with confidence. He was rejected, laughed at, told he was finished. He failed more times than most ever dared to try. And yet every time he fell, he got back up, because he believed something deeper than victory. He believed in duty. See, this is where so many of us fall short. We focus on the winning, the being no one, the glory, the fame, the reward. But Churchill said there's something deeper than that. There's a duty that we all have. There's a job that we all have to do. And sometimes doing that job, carrying out that duty, is far more important than any winning, any reward, any glory. So remember, you can't always control the results. You can't always pick up the trophy, but you can control the effort you put in, the work you put in, the amount of courage you muster up, and your willingness to carry out your duty. That's what matters. That's what counts. And that's what Churchill did. He didn't care about the fact that he had been rejected, laughed at, told he was finished, failed more times than most ever dared to try. He got back up because he had a duty to carry out. He had a job to do. He had a contribution to make. And in the end, it was that contribution, that willingness to serve that mattered most. Moving on to the next quote from Winston Churchill, which reminds us that you won't always have the easiest path. You won't always have the popularity contest on your side. But what you need is the willingness to see the job through. Maybe you're not in a war zone, but maybe you're at war with yourself, with depression, with failure, with fear. Maybe your battle is silent, invisible, and no one hears your cries. But Churchill's words, they still apply, because the battlefield is not just land. Sometimes it's your mind. If you're going through hell, keep going. Yeah, sometimes the battles you face are silent. Sometimes the wars you're waging are internal. but the principle remains the same. The most brutal of battles are fought within us, not without us. Most difficult victories are won within us, not without us. And often we don't have anyone cheering us on, no one keeping score, no one celebrating our wins. But that shouldn't matter, because the purpose isn't to win the approval of others, but to conquer ourselves. It's easy to quit when life gets hard. It's easy to say, "This isn't for me." But greatness was never meant to be easy. Churchill knew that. And if you're listening to this, maybe you know it too. Now, I want to read you this quote from Robert Greene, which reminds us that it is not always about being the most talented or the most gifted or the smartest. Sometimes it's about your willingness to pay the price, to make the sacrifice, to grind it out. Often success is simply a matter of persisting longer than your rivals. Your competitors will all burn out, grow weary and scatter, but you stay in the game, focused on your objective. You don't quit. This is the key to making sure that when the time comes and you get your opportunity, you don't fail the moment. Think about that for a second. All the preparation in the world means nothing unless you're able to follow through. Unless you're able to seize the moment and run with it, even though you may be tired, even though you may be worn out, even though you feel like quitting, even though everyone else thinks you should quit. That's when your true grit shows. That's when your resilience is tested. That's when your determination and willpower truly matter. I want to read you this final quote from Winston Churchill, which captures this idea perfectly. Churchill wasn't powerful because he was perfect. He was powerful because he refused to back down. He made tough decisions. He stood alone. He led when the world doubted, and still he stood, because the mission was greater than the man. Whatever you do, don't be afraid to stand alone. Don't be afraid to make bold moves. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to stand alone, because the mission, the cause, the purpose, the goal, the vision, it's bigger than you. It's more important than you. It matters more than you do. So take that risk. Do that uncomfortable thing. Stand up for what you believe in. Be that person you want to be. Be that man or woman of integrity, courage, kindness, leadership. Be it. Stand for something. Today, you are called to rise, to stand firm, to keep going. You may have lost everything. You may have lost the battle. You may have lost everything except for your dignity, except for your sense of self, except for your integrity. You may have lost everything, but you haven't lost yourself. Your pain is not a prison. Your failure is not the end. It is the beginning of your story, a story of someone who chose to fight, not because they weren't afraid, but because they were brave enough to go on anyway. Someone who chose to keep moving forward, despite the circumstances, despite the odds, despite the naysayers, despite the doubters, despite the haters, because deep down, they knew it wasn't about them. It was about the mission, the cause, the purpose, the goal, the vision. It was about something bigger than themselves. And in the end, that's all that matters. To each, there comes a time to stand. To each, there comes a moment to stand. And to stand firm. This is your time. This is your moment. And you must decide, will you fold under pressure, or will you become pressure itself? Whatever your war is, whatever your battlefield looks like, fight. Fall if you must, but rise again. Because the world will try to silence you. The world will try to hold you back. The world will try to stop you, but you were never born to be silent. You were born to endure, to inspire, to lead. You were never meant to give up. You were meant to keep going. You were meant to prevail. You were meant to win.